I'm 26 now, but when I turned 18, my parents kicked me out with nothing. Nearly a decade later, they came crawling back. I should have seen it coming. Looking back, there were signs everywhere. My parents were the kind of people who thought struggle made you stronger, as long as it wasn't their struggle. They bragged about how they worked for everything they had, even though my grandparents helped them with a house down payment and free childcare. But when it was my turn, suddenly tough love was the rule. I came home from my shift at the grocery store on my 18th birthday, expecting the usual half-hearted happy birthday from my mom and a nod from my dad. Instead, I found my things packed in garbage bags on the porch. My parents stood in the doorway like bouncers at a club I wasn't allowed into. Dad's exact words, "You're an adult now. Time to be one." Mom didn't even meet my eyes. "It'll build character," she added, as if she was doing me a favor. They told me they had to make their own way at my age, a lie, and that I needed to learn responsibility, another lie, considering I'd been working and paying my own expenses for 2 years already. They gave me nothing. No money. No offer to stay until I found a place. Not even a meal. Just a bag of clothes, my phone, and a good luck. I stood there in shock, but they were done. The door shut. The locks clicked. That was it. I didn't have anywhere to go. My first thought was my aunt, but when I called, she sighed like I was inconveniencing her and said, "You know how your parents are. They just want you to learn." My uncle laughed and told me to figure it out. Every relative I reached out to either ignored me or fed me the same line about how my parents were teaching me responsibility. I ended up in my car. I had about $200 to my name and no plan. I parked in the back of a Walmart lot at night, cracked the window open, and tried to sleep. The first week, I kept thinking this was temporary, that any second, my mom would call and say they changed their minds, that they were just testing me. That call never came. The money ran out fast. Gas, cheap fast food, occasional showers at the gym, every dollar vanished. I learned which gas stations had the cleanest bathrooms. I learned how to make a single meal last an entire day. I learned that when people see a young girl sleeping in a car, they either pity you or pretend you don't exist. I applied everywhere. Grocery stores, fast food, retail, nothing stuck. I wasn't the only desperate person looking for work, and without an actual address, I was even lower on the list. The worst part wasn't hunger or exhaustion. It was knowing I had parents, family, a home, but none of it was mine anymore. A month later, I got lucky. A diner downtown needed a dishwasher. It was minimum wage, barely enough to survive, but it was something. The manager, an older woman named Karen, didn't ask too many questions. She let me take extra shifts, paid me under the table at first, and turned a blind eye when I used the employee bathroom to clean up. I worked until my hands bled. I showered at the gym. I saved every dollar. Slowly, I crawled out of the hole. I missed my high school graduation because I couldn't afford to take time off work. Not that my parents cared. They made it clear I wasn't their problem. I heard through a friend that my name was called, but my seat was empty. That stung more than I expected. But the worst moment came later. I'd saved up enough to rent a tiny room in a shared house, thanks to a coworker who introduced me to a friend renting cheap. I had a bed again, a door that locked, a place to breathe. It wasn't much, but after months of sleeping in my car, it felt like a mansion. One night, I got curious and called my parents, not because I wanted to make up, just to see if they regretted it. The call went straight to voicemail. When I tried again, I realized they had blocked me. I stared at my phone, not sure whether to laugh or throw it. They had thrown me out with nothing, let me struggle, ignored me for months, then blocked me, just in case I dared to reach out. Fine. I deleted their numbers. The years blurred together after that. I worked 2 jobs, barely slept, and saved every penny. College wasn't an option, so I found a trade school instead. I became an electrician, got certified, and finally started making real money. My parents had no idea. I didn't try to reconnect. They made their choice, and I made mine. For a long time, I didn't even think about them, until they reached out. I still remember the moment. I was 25, sitting in my own apartment, scrolling through emails after work. There it was, a message from my mother. "Hey sweetie, it's been too long. We miss you. Let's catch up." No mention of the years of silence. No acknowledgement of what they did. It's just a casual, friendly message like nothing had happened. I almost deleted it, almost ignored it. Then I hesitated, because if they were reaching out now, after all these years, that meant only one thing. They needed something. And for the first time in my life, I was the one in control. Update 1. The email sat in my inbox for a full day before I touched it. It wasn't long, just a few lines from my mother saying she missed me, and that she regretted losing touch. No mention of the fact that she and my father chose to cut me off. No mention of how they blocked me after throwing me out like trash. Just a casual, almost cheerful message, as if we were long-lost friends catching up. I read it 3 times, waiting for something. An apology, an acknowledgement, anything. But there was nothing. So I played along. I responded with a short, polite reply, asked how they'd been, waited. The reply came fast. They were doing okay, but things had been rough. No details, just vague hints that something was wrong. My mother's wording was careful, like she was trying to reel me in without scaring me off. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't ask questions right away. I let the conversation stretch out, kept it light, let them believe I was genuinely happy to reconnect. Over the next week, we exchanged a few emails. My mother kept steering things toward the past, how they'd thought of me often and how they wished things had been different. Not once did she mention why things were the way they were. Then came the real reason. She finally admitted they were having a hard time financially. The business my father had owned for years had collapsed. Bad investments, poor decisions, a little too much arrogance, whatever the cause, it was gone. And without it, they were drowning in debt. Still, she didn't ask for anything. Not yet. Just laid the groundwork, waiting for me to offer. A few days later, my father called. His number had been blocked for years, so they must have gotten a new one. The moment I answered, I knew something was different. Gone was the man who called me useless and said I'd never make it. He sounded warm, friendly. He asked about my life, my job, how things were going for me. The same man who blocked me for existing was suddenly the doting father. I played my part, told him I was doing well, that work was steady. I made sure to keep details vague, but I could hear it in his voice. The realization that I wasn't struggling, that I was actually successful. That's when it really hit him. I had a good paying career, I had money, and they needed money. It didn't take long. My mother called again a few days later, slipping it into conversation. The house, the mortgage, the unpaid bills. My father had miscalculated, and now they were months behind. If they didn't come up with the money soon, they would lose everything. There was no question in her voice, no asking, just an assumption that of course I would step in. That I, the daughter they discarded without a second thought, would swoop in and save them. I let the silence stretch. Then I told her I'd think about it. I could almost hear the relief in her voice. That was enough for them. They latched onto it like it was a lifeline. Over the next few weeks, I let them believe they had a chance. I visited for the first time in years. Sat in the same living room where they had once locked me out. Let them feed me the story, piece by piece. I asked about their finances, pretending I wanted to understand the full picture. They spilled everything. Mortgage payments behind by months. Credit card debt stacked high. My father's business loans were in default. They were running out of time, and they had no one else to turn to. The more they saw of me, the more they realized how much they had underestimated me. My car wasn't brand new, but it was nice. My clothes weren't designer, but they were high quality. I wasn't barely scraping by. I was thriving. That's when the guilt trip started. My mother started talking about family, how hard it was for them to reach out, how she regretted the past but knew we could move forward. My father, once too proud to admit failure, now sat in front of me talking about second chances. I nodded, listened, pretended to care, and told them I needed more time. One night, while I was visiting, I noticed a folder on the kitchen table. Overdue bills, credit card statements, a foreclosure notice stamped in red. That's when I knew. They were completely screwed. No safety net, no backup plan. If I didn't help them, no one would. And that's exactly what I wanted. I left that night with a smile on my face and told them I'd figure things out and see what I could do. They thanked me like I had already handed them a check. They had no idea. This time I was the one in control. Update 2. Weeks passed, and my parents grew more desperate. At first they played it cool, dropping casual mentions of their tight situation, hoping I'd jump in with an offer. When I didn't, the messages became more frequent. Then, the calls started. My mother's voice carried a forced lightness, but the cracks were showing. My father barely spoke. The silence from him said more than words ever could. I let them wait. Every time they brought up the mortgage, I told them I was thinking about it, that I needed to figure things out. Each delay sent them spiraling further. The due dates crept closer. Their polite hints turned into outright pleas. I still gave them nothing. I made a point to visit again. Sat in the same house where they abandoned me and let them pour their misery out. I nodded, sighed at the right moments, even reached out like I cared. Let them believe I was considering stepping in to save them. You've already been through so much, my mother whispered, her eyes glassy. I know we weren't perfect, but we're still family. I just nodded, looking around the house. The furniture was the same, the decor unchanged. Everything still screamed of the life they were so sure I would never have. I just need to know the full picture before I do anything. I told them. I need to know exactly what you owe. They didn't hesitate. I let them believe I was seriously considering bailing them out. I told them I needed to see everything. Credit cards, mortgage statements, loans, so I could calculate what they needed. They handed it all over. Everything. I sat at their kitchen table, flipping through papers, taking mental notes. The mortgage was months behind. The auction date was already set. If they didn't pay soon, the bank would take the house. The credit cards were maxed. My father's name was attached to a failed business loan that had completely tanked. There was no saving them. They had burned every bridge, spent every last favor, and they had no idea I wasn't going to help them. My father, once too proud to even look at me, sat across the table with his hands folded. His leg bounced under the table, a nervous tick I'd never seen before. For years, this was the man who told me to figure it out, who threw me out without a second thought. Now, he was practically begging. The shift was almost pathetic. We never wanted this, he muttered. We thought we were doing what was best for you. I leaned back. Did you ever regret it? The silence stretched too long. That's not the point now, my mother cut in. We just need to move forward. That was all the confirmation I needed. I finally gave them what they were waiting for. I told them I would help, but only under strict conditions. I played it carefully, making it seem like I was doing this for their own good. I can't just hand over the money, I said. It needs to be structured, secure. I talked about financial responsibility, learning from mistakes, and how this was the only way to keep their house. They nodded along, clung to every word. Desperate people don't ask questions. They just say yes. So when I pulled out a contract, they barely skimmed it before signing. I had already spoken to a lawyer. The contract transferred the house deed to me, officially. Completely. It was written in a way that made it seem temporary, like I was just holding it as loan security. But in reality, once they signed, they no longer owned their own home. They signed without hesitation. My mother even thanked me. My father shook my hand. They thanked me. They truly believed they had won. The moment I had the signed papers, I started moving. I contacted real estate agents, started quietly preparing to flip the house. It was still valuable, even with their financial mess attached to it. All I had to do was wait for their deadline. And then it came. They called, expecting the money. I told them there was a problem, that I couldn't come through with the payments after all. I told them I was so sorry. The bank was moving forward with the foreclosure. But of course it wasn't their house anymore. It was mine. The knock on their door came the next morning. Official eviction papers. The moment they opened them, I watched the blood drain from my mother's face. My father actually stumbled back, gripping the counter. They read the documents over and over, flipping through the pages like the words would change. They didn't. I stood there calm, just watching. We have nowhere to go. My mother's voice cracked. We trusted you. I shrugged. So did I. My mother collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. My father, who had spent years calling me weak, had no words left. Just silence. They begged, offered to work something out, pleaded for anything. I reminded them of the day they locked me out at 18. No warning, no support, just a garbage bag of my things on the porch and a locked door. Then I repeated exactly what my father had said to me that day. You're an adult now. Time to be one. And I walked out. Update 3. Public shame. The eviction wasn't just a private humiliation, it was public. Word spread fast. Their friends, neighbors, even distant family members all found out. My parents tried to spin the story, claiming it was some kind of misunderstanding, but the truth always finds a way out. They turned to relatives, hoping someone would step in, but the response was underwhelming. Everyone they contacted already knew how they had treated me. The same family members who once told them that kicking me out was teaching me responsibility now had nothing to offer them. Some ignored their calls entirely. Others just told them, you made your bed. They had spent years burning bridges, and now when they needed one the most, they found themselves stranded. With no help coming, they had to downsize fast. Their once proud home was gone, and now they were crammed into a tiny, run-down apartment. The kind of place where the walls were thin, the neighbors were loud, and the smell of cheap cleaning products never quite masked the scent of old cigarette smoke. It was a far cry from the house they used to own. The house that was now mine. They weren't adjusting well. The complaints started almost immediately. The place was too small, the landlord was unfair, the city was too expensive. But complaining didn't change the fact that they were barely scraping by. My father, once the man who prided himself on being the provider, was now jobless, and my mother's salary alone wasn't enough to keep up. Desperation crept in. They started reaching out to anyone who would listen. Friends, co-workers, distant relatives, anyone they hadn't already alienated. No one stepped up. They tried asking for loans, promising to pay them back as soon as they got back on their feet. But no one believed them anymore. The same people who had once admired them now avoided their calls. The doors they used to walk through so confidently were now closed. They had expected me to be their safety net, but once that option was gone, they realized something they never thought possible. They were on their own. The stress hit my father hard. The weight loss was visible. His hair thinned out. The proud man who used to carry himself with an air of untouchability now moved like a shadow of his former self. Then came the hospital visits. At first, they were minor, checkups, tests. Then, it got worse. His blood pressure was through the roof. He had trouble breathing. Doctors warned him to take it easy, but taking it easy wasn't an option when there was no money left. The hospital bills piled up fast. Too fast. Without proper insurance, they had to choose what to pay. Rent or medical bills, groceries or medication. Nothing was enough. That's when my mother reached out again. The first message was casual. A simple, hey, can we talk? I ignored it. Then, the calls started. First, once a day, then multiple times. Then a voicemail. Her voice cracked, desperate. I finally listened. She needed help. Not the kind where she wanted advice or emotional support. She needed money. Just a little? Just enough to get through the month. I knew what was coming. When I finally answered, she launched into the speech she had probably rehearsed 100 times. My father was sick. They were struggling. The apartment was too expensive. They just needed a little help. I told her I could help. Then I Venmoed her exactly $100. The same amount she had thrown at me the day she kicked me out. She rejects it. The response was instant. Another call. Another voicemail, this time with rage behind it. She accused me of being heartless, of being cruel, of abandoning my own parents. But she didn't say anything about when they abandoned me. I didn't respond. I didn't think about them after that. I had my own life, my own home, my own peace. For the first time in years, I felt free. New home, new life with the money I had made from selling their old house. I upgraded. Bought a place far away. A house that was mine and mine alone. No ghosts of the past. No bad memories. Just a fresh start. Months passed. Then a year. I never heard from them again, not directly at least. But people talk. A childhood friend reached out, not realizing we weren't in contact. She mentioned my parents in passing, talking about how badly things had gone for them. They lost everything, she said. They've been moving from place to place. No one wants to take them in. I just nodded, not offering anything in return. One day, I drove by the house that used to be mine. New owners had moved in. The yard looked better. The paint was fresh. It looked like a home again. I didn't stop. Didn't feel the need to. That chapter of my life was closed. I had no regrets. No guilt. Just peace. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with them. Just like I had to. Update 4. A final plea. Months after the eviction, things had been silent. I figured my parents had finally given up, that they had found some way to survive without me. Then, one evening, a message popped up in my inbox. My mother. There was no manipulation this time. No guilt tripping. Just pure desperation. She said they had lost everything. That they had tried, but it was impossible. That she had no one left to turn to. She begged. Not for money. Not for help with bills. She begged for a place to stay. For the first time, she didn't pretend to be strong. For the first time, she admitted they had nowhere else to go. She mentioned my father's health had gotten worse. That he was too weak to work. That hospital bills had piled up faster than they could handle. He had stopped eating properly. Stopped taking his medication. The stress had destroyed him, but even in the email it was clear. She wasn't asking for help because she regretted what they had done to me. She was asking because they had no other choice. On top of everything else, my mother had lost her job. Too many missed shifts. Too much stress. Too many things piling up at once. With no income from either of them, they had no way to survive. They were drowning, and every attempt to grab onto something just pulled them down further. They had downgraded again. The tiny apartment they had barely been able to afford was gone. Now they were somewhere worse. A rundown one-bedroom in a bad part of town. The kind of place with roaches in the walls and broken locks on the doors. They had gone from homeowners to homeless in a matter of months. And now they were reaching out to the daughter they abandoned for a lifeline. The same relatives who once praised them for teaching me responsibility had turned their backs on them. They had asked for help. No one offered. People remembered what they had done. Some ignored them. Some told them, "You made your bed, now lie in it." There was no sympathy left. My mother's final plea was simple. "Can we stay with you? Just for a little while. No money, no handouts, just a roof." She didn't even pretend to believe it would be temporary. They had nowhere else to go. I didn't hesitate. I refused. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I had spent years pulling myself out of the hole they threw me into. I wasn't about to let them drag me back down. She broke down. The sobs started over the phone. Then the begging. She swore she never meant to hurt me, that she had thought of me every day, that she had prayed for a second chance. That families stick together. She didn't mention the years they ignored me. She didn't mention the nights I went hungry. She didn't mention the car I slept in. I didn't let her twist the narrative. I reminded her exactly what they did to me. I told her about the nights I sat alone in my car, trying to figure out if I would even survive the next week. How I had to beg for shifts just to afford food. How I had missed my own graduation, because I wasn't even allowed in my own home. I reminded her that when I reached out for help, they blocked my number. I asked her if she ever cared about what happened to me. She had no answer. She tried to justify it. They thought I had it under control. They wanted to teach me resilience. They didn't think it would be that bad. They thought I would be fine. I reminded her of the words she threw at me when she locked the door behind me at 18, that I was an adult now, that I had to figure it out. That struggling builds character. I told her she should use that same resilience now. She sobbed harder. But I didn't waver. She realized I wasn't going to change my mind. There were no more second chances. She hung up in defeat. That was the last time we ever spoke. My father never reached out. Not once. Maybe pride stopped him. Maybe shame did. Or maybe he just knew it wouldn't change anything. That night, I blocked the number. Blocked the email. Blocked everything. There would be no more messages. No more last chances. No more ghosts from the past. There was no lingering resentment. No anger. No sadness. Just peace. They were finally gone. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. Update 5. Months passed without a word from my mother. I figured she had finally given up, that she had learned to survive the way she expected me to. Then one afternoon, she showed up at my workplace. The front desk receptionist called me, voice hesitant, saying there was a woman outside asking for me. She looked rough, disheveled clothes, messy hair, eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. She had no appointment, no reason to be there, just desperation written all over her face. The security cameras outside the building showed her pacing, checking her phone, wiping her face. She looked like someone who had nothing left. She waited. She wasn't leaving without talking to me. She started causing a disturbance when the receptionist refused to call me down immediately. Her voice rose, attracting attention. A few coworkers had gathered near the windows, whispering. No one knew who she was, but they could tell it wasn't good. It didn't take long before someone came to get me. One of my colleagues walked into my office, looking uneasy. "There's a woman outside," they said. "She's asking for you." It's not subtle. I already knew who it was. I could have ignored her. Let security handle it. But instead, I walked downstairs. I stepped outside and saw her immediately. She froze when she saw me. For a moment, she just stared, like she didn't recognize me. Or maybe she did, but she hadn't expected this version of me, the one who had built a life without her. Then she burst into tears. She started talking fast, words tumbling over each other. How much she missed me, how she had made mistakes, how she was struggling and didn't know what else to do. She stood there, crying in the middle of my workplace parking lot, pouring out regrets she had never spoken before. But even now, she never fully owned it. She said things could have been different, that she wasn't in the right place back then, that she didn't know what she was doing. But she never actually apologized for throwing me out, never admitted how she ruined my life before it even started. She just cried, repeating how much she needed me now. Then came the real reason she was there. She had nowhere to go. She had lost everything. No savings, no home, no one left to help her. She begged for a place to stay. Just for a little while. Just until she could get back on her feet. She looked at me like she was sure I would say yes. Like I was still the child she had once controlled. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. Didn't waste time. I just looked her in the eye and repeated the exact words she told me when she kicked me out at 18. "You're an adult. You'll figure it out." She blinked. For the first time, she understood. She never expected me to be indifferent. Not like this. Not after everything. She had built up this version of me in her head, one where I was still desperate for her approval, still craving a family that had never truly existed. That version of me was dead. She collapsed to the ground, not physically, but emotionally, wailing, pleading, clutching at my arm like she could make me change my mind. I turned my back and walked away. She didn't stop. She kept crying, kept begging, even as I walked back into the building. The receptionist was already on the phone. A few minutes later, security stepped in. They asked her to leave. When she refused, they made her. She left with nothing, just like I had, all those years ago. That night, I blocked everything. Her number, her email, any possible way she could reach me. Gone. She had played her last card, and she had lost. I didn't check in on her, didn't ask how she was doing, but word still reached me. She was living in a shelter now. She couldn't hold a job for long. Too much baggage, too much instability. Every bridge was burned. She had no one left. I didn't feel happy about it. There was no joy in seeing her fall. No triumph in watching her suffer. Just finality. She had gotten exactly what she gave.